The grief that comes when we experience new levels of giving or receiving love is something that's not talked about enough. I've noticed that there's a pattern in myself and clients and friends where we'll experience this really beautiful new level of just openness in our heart. And it's incredible and it's what everybody wants. But what happens is then, as we experience that, we're confronted with the reality of the ways that we haven't had that in the past, whether that's in not expecting that in our relationships or in seeing ways that we've closed our heart off to others. And it's painful. It's grief. It's really like you can have tears come, you can have a lot of feelings come up, you can have memories come up. And I think it's normal. I think it's just part of, this process. And as people have become more and more self-reflective, more self-aware, we're accessing new levels of self-love. And as we access new levels of self-love, we're accessing new levels of ways that we can truly give to others and that we can open our heart to receive that love from others. And, just like any other thing where we're developing and becoming more aware of, ways that in the past we weren't acting in our highest and best good, then there's always a grief. There's always a looking back. And it's what can keep us stagnant, to look at the ways that we weren't living up to what we now know is our capacity is painful. But it's in that grief process that we're able to truly integrate what these new levels of consciousness mean. With every stage, with every new phase of our ascension, our self-awareness, whatever you want to call it, there's an acknowledgement of maybe something that was off or is off, an acceptance of it, and then the integration comes in being okay with it. Maybe we can still have regret, we can have pain, we can say, why wasn't I loving like this before? But it's a magical thing when we can start to love those parts of ourselves. And the reasons that we weren't living in the way that we want to now are because we didn't have the capacity. And we can beat ourselves up about that all day long, but the reasons we weren't living in that capacity is because there was things that we had learned in the past that were systems that kept us safe. They kept us safe from feeling hurt, kept us safe from being vulnerable in ways that felt scary. So these new levels that we're accessing in ourselves and in our relationships are so beautiful, but don't expect it to come without pain. What that can often look like is, I hear these stories of people saying, what happened? Things were so perfect. And then kaboom, crash, collapse. That's what it is. And that doesn't mean that the love that was there wasn't amazing. It means that it was, and it was pushing one or both partners into a place where they hadn't been, a level of vulnerability that feels kind of shaky. And what is all this attachment stuff that we talk about? Is this disorganized? Is this avoidant? Is this anxious? I think it's a combination of all of it. I think it's just different ways that the love wounding that we've experienced can manifest in our lives. And by looking at it, by truly allowing it to be there, allowing ourselves to process that, even if it's, mainly a somatic processing, we're allowing ourselves to access new capacities. The human being, so much of our psyche, our bodies, everything is kind of driven towards a homeostasis, towards staying the same. Yet we also have such a drive to continue to perfect. But it's kind of the vacillation between those two, the seeing that there's something that's not right and finding a way to look inside, look outside, and become more aware of what it is and create a better way of being is so beautiful. But then there's often that regression, and giving space, expecting there to be moments of regression, is really the magic in allowing the further expansion. There's always going to be expansion and contraction, expansion, contraction. And especially when we're getting into places that kind of feel a little scary or unsafe, levels of vulnerability that we've worked so hard, unconsciously usually, to protect against. But there's so much capacity within our human being selves to grow, to evolve. And really, that's one of the most amazing things about being human, is this ever expanding ability to grow and change and become closer and closer to what we truly want to be. And how can we allow there to be some grace for ourselves in the grieving that comes with each new level of expansion, the acknowledgement of the times we didn't have that before, the times we accepted less, the times we gave less, and not hating ourselves for it, not denying it, but moving through it, accepting and integrating is so important. And yeah, it's just, humans kind of messy. But how can we move through that messiness with the most grace possible and the most space for expansion?